So welcome back, guys, in another podcast. And today we have Divyan Singh. So he has done his computer engineering from Kalinga Institute of Industrial Technology, and currently is working as a software developer engineer at a Razorpay. And previously he has interned at a Razorpay as a front-end engineer. So thank you, Divyansh, for coming to our podcast.
Thank you, Omkar, for having me. It's
Yeah,
great to be here.
yeah. So Divyansh, let's start with the first question. So how you get into Razorpay as a front end engineer?
Okay,
So कैसे
so
कैसे
yeah,
journey start हुआ? Yeah,
so I remember कि it was during the time when COVID started, right?
yeah,
So for most of them, COVID was a very bad phase. I'm assuming, and it was actually a very bad phase for the entire nation, right? But
yeah,
for me as a student, right, it gave me a golden opportunity to be at my comfort place, that is my home, and learn whatever I wanted to. Irrespective of the frustration and the things we used to do in college, right? Regular attendance,
yeah,
regular classes, and all, where we actually did not get enough time to work on what we love, right? So we were at home, right? And during the COVID, our college was closed, and it was informed to us that the exams will be online and all. So we all know
yeah,
how to pass when the exams are online, right? So
yeah,
yeah, so that is when I started to explore things, right? It is not something I was always interested in front end. It is just something that I found out to be very interesting to be working on. So I started with doing a backend, right? That is the first thing that I started on. I learned Python, I learned Flask, and that is where I started to learn what backend is, how to write APIs, and all of that stuff, right? And I saw okay, backend is good, but still this is not something I would like to spend most of my time learning or working with, right? I did not find myself much interested in there. Then I started to work on Android development, right? So that is where I started in. Again, the same thing, that is again something that I was not interested in at all. And coming down to, I started with learning front end, right? So starting with the very basics, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? So once I was done with that, I started with learning React.js, because that is something that was on that is a very trending framework, I would say, right? Framework slash
yeah,
library. And I started with learning React.js. It took me a good amount of time to actually learn it, right? And that is something that I found out very interesting to actually work on. Not just because how interesting is it to play with the UI components, and you can actually visually see things, right? Whatever you're coding, you can actually see things in action, and that is something that the customer will be looking at for the first time. He will be visiting a company's portal or a dashboard, right? It is the front end and not the back end. So that is something that I found very interesting to work on. So I started my journey with front end only. Then I decided I will move forward with working with front end only. So I started with learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML, CSS. So there is a book by John Duckett. Okay. I'm not sure what the name of the book is. So there is this book. I guess just give me a second. Yep. There's this book called written by John Duckett. Okay. So on HTML, CSS, design and build websites. So this is the book, right, that I actually went through to have a better idea of how HTML, CSS works, right? Although this is something that most of the audience is familiar with, because this is something that gets taught in junior schools also, right? In some of the colleges, right? So once I
yeah,
was done with HTML, CSS, I started with building very simple static web pages, right? Copying the UI for Zomato, copying the UI for Swiggy. So these websites were there. You cannot actually interact with things there, but it was just a replication of the UI things that you will be seeing, right?
hmm,
So once I got confident with HTML, CSS, right, I started learning JavaScript. So JavaScript, for learning JavaScript, there are some courses on Udemy, right? You will find the same courses on Torrent also.
hmm,
And there are a lot of YouTube channels in on YouTube right now, if you see, right? So
yeah,
where you can actually learn things without actually investing much of your money there, right?
hmm, yeah,
So education is for free at this point of time, I'd say. Okay, it is actually useless to put in some money at some course or something, uh, where you actually know you will find those courses on YouTube or maybe on Torrent, right? Torrent is like the treasure hunt, a place where you can actually hunt for treasures, right? When we talk about courses, movies, and whatnot. So when I was done with JavaScript, right? So for JavaScript, I had to go through a lot of stuff, including articles on Geeks for Geeks, right? So what I did was, I created a plan, right? I took a paper basically. I noted down all the concepts that I would be learning in JavaScript, right? And once I was done with writing all the concepts, right, I used to just Google those points, Google those headings, and go through multiple articles that are available on Geeks for Geeks or maybe from media, right? Medium. So I used to go through those articles a lot, and that is how I actually started to learn JavaScript, right? So I had never invested a single penny in any of the courses. May it be Udemy or something else, right? Now, when I started to learn about React.js, right? So at that time, I remember I was not able to find a concise way of learning React.js, right? So I thought of trying a course, right? That is the first time I actually referred to a video course. So there is this course available on O'Reilly, which is actually paid. But what I used to do was I used to create multiple Gmail accounts, right? And for one Gmail account, it used to give you a trial of 10 days. And there were total, I guess, 400 to 450 lectures on React.js. So that is how I learned React.js. So it took me, I remember it took me around 6 to 7 months to actually learn React.js. The only problem was when I was in the mid of React.js, right? My semester exams used to come, and I used to take a gap of, let's say, 15 to 20 days. And that is where I used to see कि I have forgotten most of the concepts that I've already gone through. So I had to just go back a step again, start React.js from the bare scratch, and learn things up. So it took me actually a very long time to get a good grasp of React.js. Once I was done with React.js, right, I started to work on projects. I started to participate in hackathons, right? So you will find multiple hackathons on Hacker Earth, right? So I started participating on hackathons, right? That is a very good place to actually where you can actually work on something, right? That is based on some real life problem statement. You will not only get a good problem statement to work on, but also you will have some projects to showcase on your resume, some good projects to showcase on your resume that are not that readily available on internet, right? Now the projects, for example, you'll find a bunch. I have seen a bunch of folks, right, having resumes and projects like Instagram clone or maybe Twitter clone or something, right? So I'd say these clone projects, right? These are very good for practice purposes, but I don't think this is something that you should have on your resume, right? Because see, when you write Instagram clone, right, the person who would be looking at a resume, he is not familiar with who you are, right? How you work and how hardworking you are. He will just see it's a cricket. There is an Instagram clone written, and that is very easily available on internet. Might be possible that he must have copied it from somewhere, right? A very simple thought. It might be possible that you have coded each and every single line of code by yourself, but doesn't make sense if the person who is reviewing your resume gets a feeling where he thinks, this person might have copied it from somewhere. So these projects are actually very good when you talk about practicing or sort of revision stuff, right? But for projects, I would say the best way to get unique project ideas would be, if you go through hackathons, right? So they will give you a real life problem statements to work on. You will be having problem statements. You will have a strong idea of what is there. Also, if you manage to be on the top rankers, right? This is something that you can put on your resume, right? I participated in this hackathon and I received, let's say, I attained 10th rank in, let's say, this particular XYZ hackathon. That is a sort of a plus pointer on your resume. But coming back to the question, right, about the front end. So this is how my journey actually started, right, by learning HTML, CSS, then JavaScript, and then React.js, right. Now it took me actually a very long time to learn these 3, 4 languages, right. But there have been folks, right, a couple of my batchmates also, who started very late, but they were able to complete all of these tech stack, right, in just a span of 4 to 5 months, right? So it's completely on the pace of someone who is learning things, right? It's completely on your own pace. If you are someone who is good with memory, right, who has a sort of photographic memory of something of that sort, right, it would not take much time. But if you are someone like me, who takes a long time to actually remember things, right, and is very lazy, right? So in that case, it might be possible that it might take some time to you. to grasp things up, but you will be surely reaching that point where you will be very confident on what you're doing and what you're not.
Yeah. So you mentioned about hackathons. So instead of hackathons, can we create a projects like समझो कि मेरा मुझे कोई e-commerce website जो मैं कुछ खुद के products list करके so this can also be good for it, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
So what I meant to say was, see, a
yeah,
hackathon, participating in hackathons, what it helps you to do
हाँ,
is you work
create,
in teams, right? You get to
हाँ,
work with teams. So that, and when you join corporate, right, you will be
हाँ, हाँ,
working in a team, right? So that is a again a plus pointer there. Someone
yeah,
basically gets a ticket. This guy has some experience in working in teams, right? So
hmm,
there is a term called team collaboration, right?
yeah,
And coming to the projects, right? It is not a
हाँ,
compulsion or some mandatory thing. You need to have projects from hackathons only. But this is something
हाँ,
that I used to prefer, right? If you're
okay,
okay with having your own project ideas, right? So in my
हाँ,
resume, I remember when I used to apply back then in college, I used to have like
हाँ,
3 to 4 projects, right? And two out of them were from the hackathon, right?
hmm,
And two were projects that I coded it myself, right? So
oh,
one of them was a sort of an e-commerce application sort of thing, where instead
yeah,
of ordering things, so it was a COVID-based application, right?
हाँ,
So when it was COVID, right? So my area where I used to live in was a hotspot.
hmm,
So there was barricading, you cannot go outside and all.
hmm,
So I thought this is a problem, right? And most of us are actually facing it. So why not to build something on that, right? So what I
yeah,
did was government can assign us a seller for a particular area, right?
hmm,
Now that seller's duty is to pick goods from the local shops in that area and deliver it
yeah,
to the user whosoever has ordered things.
hmm,
Now that project included sort of allocating different sellers as per the area. For example, when you put in your address, right? Okay, this is my address where the goods have to be delivered. So it will
हाँ,
go to the database, pick the seller that belongs to that particular address where you're trying to order things, right? And that seller will get a notification, right, on his dashboard where it will tell kids that these are the goods that you need to deliver to this particular address, and these are the nearest shops from where you can pick these goods from.
oh,
So it was a multiple role based login system. So where government employee can log in, right? And he will see
hmm,
the entire actions history. This seller declined this order, this seller accepted this order, and this was the payment and all of that stuff. Then there is a dashboard for the what do we say? Seller, right? Where he will be
हाँ,
able to see the previous orders, right? The upcoming
oh,
orders or the current orders that he wants to give with the ability to actually edit that orders. You want, let's say, 5 kgs of rice, but the shop has only 3 kgs available. So you can edit
हाँ,
it. I can deliver 3 kgs of rice. 5 is not something that is not possible to avoid the problem of stocking because right that is
हाँ,
also something that was in very frequent in that case, right? And people used to stock up things, right, and used to sell it at a very higher price point, right? Just to keep that thing also in place, we had a limit set for each of the goods. You cannot order this good more than this quantity, and up to itna orders in a week or in a month. Then the third login was for the customer, right? It
hmm.
was a single login page, but it used to detect what kind of user you are.
Okay, so it's multi-level
Yes, yes,
admin,
yes.
like, yeah,
Yep. So each of these
okay,
folks has access to different things, different functionalities that was on portal. So this was something that I built, right? This is something that but it had a very bad UI actually. I can like say it right now. So when I see that project, right, I used to think, why did I coded something like this? Nothing, no
yeah,
CSS was there, just plain
हाँ,
table and all of that stuff. No, nothing there. So it was based on simple HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There was no React JS nothing. So it was just simple HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So this was one of the projects. I don't remember the second project that was there, but other two projects was from the hackathons only. So it is up to
oh,
you, right? Have
yeah,
a project on your resume, right? That you think will able to show your expertise on a wide range of front end, right? It is,
hmm,
for example, your project might consist the logic for state management, right? Talking about
हाँ,
front end, right? So you can use your stand or you can use Redux, whatever you are comfortable with, right? Or maybe some other like Flux you can use or something, whatever you feel
hmm,
comfortable with, right? Then you can have routings in place, right? That is an important aspect of building dashboards and web pages, right? Then you can have a couple of things, right? You can have some open source API calls, right? To showcase, you're well familiar with how APIs work and how to make an API request and handle the promises that it returns, right? So all of
Hmm.
that stuff is also there. So have projects that actually explore the wider horizon of front end domain is what I mean to
Hmm.
say. It doesn't matter if that is from a hackathon or if that is something that you have come up with, right? It does not actually
Hmm.
matter, but it is something that you should have on your resume. Avoid having clones on your resume. That is a good stuff to actually when you want to practice or revise something,
Ah.
but not something you would like to showcase on your resume, right?
Hmm. Yeah, right. So, according to you, as a front-end engineer, how DSA is important? Like, जैसे हम लोग डीएसए के लीड कोड के 200 क्वेश्चन करते हैं, 400 करते हैं, कोई 500 करते हैं. सो अकॉर्डिंग टू यू कितना डीएसए इम्पोर्टेंट है कि एज ए कोई भी अच्छी कंपनी में फ्रंट एंड इंजीनियर का रोल मिले?
ठीक है. So I see this is a very common question, right?
या
I get a lot of these questions on my LinkedIn also. But yeah, so the question here is how much DSA is important, and even if मतलब, is DSA important or not, right? That is the
हाँ
question. So the
या
first question is DSA important? So the answer to that is yes. DSA is important. So when you start to work on any corporate or any project, right? For any corporate and any project, there will be instances where you will have to bring up your problem solving skills to actually come up with a solution that best suits the requirement, right?
या
So that is where your DSA and all of these problem solving abilities comes into picture. So DSA
हाँ
is important. That is true. Now the question is how much DSA, right? So there are two
हाँ
things. First is having a basic idea, having the fundamentals clear on DSA, and second is doing CP, competitive
हाँ
programming.
हाँ
Competitive programming is not at all necessary for front end, right? But you should be well familiar with the fundamentals of linked list, right? Linked list, arrays, strings, and objects, especially objects. When we talk about front end, right? We talk a lot, and especially when we talk about JavaScript and or JavaScript-based frameworks or libraries, we talk about objects, right? So
या
objects is something that you should be very good with when you want to work on things, right? So objects, string manipulation, array manipulation, then you have linked list, you have stacks, you have queues. Now why stack and queue? Because there is something
हाँ
that exists called event loop in
हाँ
JavaScript, right? That uses the concept of stack and queue.
या
So it is important, and that becomes a very common question that gets asked in an interview if someone want to ask it, right? So that is where stack and queues knowledge comes into picture. You should be well familiar with linked list and circular linked list as well, because there have been instances when I've been asked questions in JavaScript, and the solution of that actually led us to circular linked list,
हम्म
right? So there have been instances. So I remember there was an interview that so for that interview, I actually went to the office to give that interview, right? It was not something that you have to sit at your home in front of a screen and give an
हाँ
interview. So it was sort of you have to go to their office, right? They'll assign you a cabin and a couple of interviewers, and they'll ask you questions there. They'll assign their own system to you and ask you to code the things there. So that is a complete different environment there, right? So they
हम्म
asked me a question about infinitely nesting object, and the concept that was getting used there was circular linked list, right?
हाँ
So you should be well familiar with these concepts. Have your fundamentals clear, right? You should know कि if there is any question, right? You should not be sitting blank. Okay, this is the question. What should I do? What should I not? Have that much of knowledge. You are when you read a question, you get a click in your mind. Okay, this is something that might use stack or might use queue, right? Have that much of confidence. It is not important to do CP and all that much, but if you're interested, if you're something that is fascinated on coding and CP, right? Definitely explore it.
या
A good thing to do. But for front end specificity, for specifically front end, right? CP is not at all required, right? You can what you can do is just learn any one of the language. For example, I prefer C++, right? But that is again up to your preference. Someone might use
हाँ
Java, someone might use C or whatnot, right? Choose a language. For me, it is C++. Learn it, right? There is STL and all of that stuff. Learn it. Once you're done with that, start practicing. If you're very new, right? If you're very new, like how I started was when I was very new, right? I started
हाँ
with coding on HackerEarth. right?
हाँ
Once I solved like around 60 to 70 questions right there. So I built a sort of confidence. Okay, now I know how to write basic stuff in coding, right?
हाँ
Then I moved forward to HackerRank. Then
हाँ
practiced sometime there, right? I did all these certifications that is there, right? For example,
हाँ हाँ
problem solving
matches
certification, C++ and all that stuff. Once I
हाँ
was qualified in those certifications, I moved forward with Code Chef, right? So
हाँ
I gave a lot of contests there. I used to solve problems a lot there, right? Just to have things in a better place, right? So,
हम्म,
so there are two things on Code Chef. One is a long challenge and one is a short challenge, right?
हम्म,
So you need to keep things in mind. Ki short challenge is all about time management. It is not something where you get a question and you start to search on internet, okay,
हाँ
what algorithm is getting used? Let me learn this algorithm. The short contest is not about that. It is more or less about the time management. Long
हाँ
contest is more about learning things and implementing it. So well, let's say
हाँ
there is a question that comes up in front of you, right? And
हाँ
you're not familiar with what type of concept it is using. So give it an internet search. Okay, so when you give it a search, right? Let's say you find out it is using an algorithm called diffing algorithm, right?
हाँ
That is something that virtual DOM actually uses in JavaScript. But anyway,
हाँ
so let's say you find out it's a diffing algorithm is something that might get used. So now, because that is a long challenge, right? That is something that is a 10 days challenge or 9 days challenge, right? So you have plenty good amount of time, right? So you can actually learn that algorithm. You can practice a little on that algorithm, and then try to implement that algorithm in your problem statement. So long challenge is all about learning things and implementing it, and short challenges are all about having a time management kind of stuff where you actually code things faster, right? You only need to get things done there, right? So I practice a lot on Code Chef, right? And uh, by then I had a pretty good confidence on if there is a question uh, if that comes up to me, I'll be able to find out what kind of data structure it is using. Might be possible that I stumble at some place while I code it, right? But I will be familiar with कि अच्छा ठीक है, this is a tech stack that is getting used, and I'll be able to figure out a way to solve that thing,
हाँ
right? Although there will always be chances कि you get stuck in an interview, but you should keep one thing in mind: कि interviewer is there to help you. He will not accept 100% picture perfect solution from you.
हाँ
He will be just seeing on if you are on the correct path or not, right? He will give you
yeah
hints, right?
हम्म,
Just pay attention to whatever he says, right? Let's say if you're trying to do something on Stack and he says, "Ki, don't you think this might be a problem when you work on Stack?" So there is a clear indication, this is the wrong tech stack that you might be working on. Try to think something of something else, right?
हम्म,
So pay attention to what interviewer says. He's there to help you. He just wants to see if you're able to find the correct path. He's not there to check if you're able to reach the destination. If that is the case, very good, good enough. But all he wants is you're on the correct path. He will give you hints wherever required. He will help you, and it's you if you are able to catch those hints or not,
हाँ
right? And the last thing that once you are good with DSA, right? Once you are confident with having these concepts in place, now the question comes: how do I keep revising things, right? How do I manage to do my DSA along with my projects and all, right?
हाँ
So what you can do is what I personally recommend is once you are at that stage where you're confident with these data structures, right? Switch to lead code, right?
हाँ
Do all the contests that are there, attend all the contests that are there. It would hardly take 3 hours or 4 hours, maybe, right? Depending on the length of the contest. But those 3 hours will give you a quick revision on your concepts on the DSA. Now, the
yeah
time that you have apart from that 3 hours, you can invest that time in your projects. So that is how you can manage things,
yeah
right?
so that's
So,
about DSAS, right?
yes.
So
So DSA
let
is definitely important,
yeah
but it is not something that becomes a ruling factor when we talk about front end domain.
hmm. Because what happens sometimes, so we are applying for a front end roles, and in the first round of interview, they ask lead code medium or hard questions. So lot of student ask the so ये तो front end का interview है, so DSA क्यों पूछ रहे हैं? So
So see,
that's
as you have said, right? So I
हाँ
remember when I sat for front end engineer intern at Razorpay, right? So the
हाँ,
first round that is there, I was asked three DSA questions. Okay. Now the questions were not very tough, right? It was
हाँ,
doable. But the trick there was कि you have to code those questions in JavaScript.
oh,
You cannot use C++, you cannot use Python, you cannot use Java. You have to use JavaScript. So it was a very simple test. All they wanted to test was कि knowing JavaScript is good. Are you able to code things in JavaScript? Right?
oh,
DSA questions were not very tough, right? It was manageable, right? If you have a little bit idea of how arrays work, how string manipulation works, right? How what is linked list or stack or queue, you would be able to do that question very easily. Not something where you have to put a lot of brain into, but
yeah,
all they wanted to check was whether or not you're comfortable coding in JavaScript, right?
hmm,
As a front-end engineer. Now,
yes,
now when I sat for Amazon Dublin, right? Now
hmm,
Amazon is famous for questions of DSA, right? So
हाँ,
I remember the first. I don't remember the what round it was, but there was two rounds that I remember, right? So the first round that I can remember of, there was a couple of DSA questions that they wanted me to code, and there was no language constraint on that. You have to use JavaScript or you have to use C++. You can use any of those, right? Those were
हाँ,
again manageable. You can see, things will be manageable once you are comfortable with the concepts, once you're comfortable with the fundamentals of linked list, how linked list works, right? What is its use case? What are nodes? How to actually write code in when you talk about linked list, right? You do not have to learn a lot about linked list, go into much depth and all of that stuff, but you should know how things work there, right? About stack
yeah,
use, linked list, trees, and graphs. So trees and graphs that is something that I don't think people ask very readily, right? But it is something that you should know because when we talk about front end, right, we talk about virtual DOM. When we talk about virtual DOM, we talk about tree structure, DOM, which we call,
hmm,
right? So it is important to understand what tree is, right? So you can see everything is related there. Although there will be cases that you might not be working on tree and all of that stuff, but it is always a good thing to know about how trees work, how to traverse through a tree, right? Now the different algorithms that you have on tree and graphs, that is something that you can learn when you want to use it as a front end developer, right? But you should be familiar with these data structures like trees and graphs, is what
yeah.
I'm saying.
So at least we have the idea of what is it.
Exactly.
So let's now move forward to another question. So how important is it for a candidate to have a strong understanding of system design concepts? So,
Okay. So for fresher, right?
yeah,
So
perfect.
for fresher, I would say if you do not have any idea about system design, that is also okay.
Yeah,
They do not expect a lot from freshers. Actually, from freshers we expect is he should be good with the subjects that he have been studying in college. For example, the
हाँ,
whatever things he might be using in corporate, right? So
हाँ,
OS, DBMS, computer networks, right?
hmm,
So all of these subjects is what they want you to excel in, right? You should know things are there, like the paging, then the load balancer, what are ER diagrams, what are DBMS and all of that stuff, right? So you
हाँ,
should be familiar with those stuff, right? Coming to system design, that is actually something that is, I don't think people ask system design to a fresher, although you know it is a very good thing, right? But if you are someone who want to give it a look, right? So there is this book, Grokking the System Design Interview, right?
हाँ,
So you can just go through that book, a very great book, a very good book to actually where you can learn things about system design or of that from scratch, right? So the book name is Grokking System Design Interview. But again, coming back to the question, having a knowledge of system design is good. That is definitely a plus pointer for a fresher, but it is not something that is a very mandatory thing for a fresher that they expect from a fresher, right? It is something that they might expect from a 1 year experience guy or 2 year experience guy, but from a fresher they won't expect that guy or that girl, right, might be knowing system design and all that stuff.
yes. So our extracurricular activities or the soft skill will help to crack this interviews like कुछ काम में आता है क्या अगर हमारे हमने कुछ एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर किया है या
So
सॉफ्ट
if
स्किल
you
की है अपार्ट
hmm.
फ्रॉम टेक्निकल या कंटिन्यू
So if extracurricular means swimming, badminton, tennis, then no. ठीक है. Interviewer or the companies not at all interested in knowing ki whether or not you know tennis or swimming or not, right? When extracurricular, if you want to say something like something related to tech, right? For example, you have done some freelancing work, or maybe you have participated in some internal hackathons that happens in your college, or maybe you have conducted some sessions in your college, right? Some technical basically. That is understandable, but having something like, you are a gold medalist in swimming, right?
Hmm.
You're a silver
Ah,
medalist in tennis, let's say. That is not something that a company or the guy is interested in, right?
hmm,
So having extracurricular is good, right? It will definitely give you something extra to work on, right? So that you do not get frustrated on working on the same thing day and night. But that is not something that the interviewer is interested in, until and unless that is something related to tech or something. For example, hackathons, right? If you are someone who likes to participate in hackathons like I do, right? So that is something that is extra, that I count as an extracurricular activities, right? Because that is something that is outside the scope of syllabus that we get in a college, right? So that
ah,
for me is an extracurricular activities, right? Conducting sessions in colleges, right? It's tech related sessions. That is also something about extracurricular activities, right? So having those kind of activities is a plus point. But other than that, I don't think that is useful. So I remember ki I along with my couple of friends used to run a community, okay,
ah,
sometime back. So where we used to reach out to different colleges, right? And it was completely free of cost. We did not
ah,
used to charge anything. So we used to reach out to colleges, right? And we used to get a good response actually from around 100 to 150 students we used to get from one college. The only thing that we used to do was help them clear their doubts if there is any doubt that they are facing while working on. Let's say they're confused between two courses, right? Or
ah,
maybe they wanted to get some resources that for JavaScript from there where they can learn something, right? So we used to pass them those resources, right? And so we used to sort of guide them, but not actually teach something to them, right? But there have been instances when they came up with a good question as a doubt, right? And we actually set up a call for them, one-on-one call for them to actually help them understand what it means and how it happens, right? But again,
ah,
this is something that I used to do as an extracurricular activity back then. But now I'm sort of a instructor at ActiJob, right? Part-time instructor where I
ah,
at my free time after my office hours
yeah,
definitely I take sessions on React and Redux along with the placement
hmm,
readiness module. So where we
oh,
revise HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React.js, build a couple of projects there, right? On a one-on-one live sessions. So that is something that I do on my weekdays after my office hours, right? It's mostly a 2 hour session, around 10 to 11 or 10, sorry, 9 to 11, or sometimes it stretches a bit. But on weekends, then on weekends, I take a doubt session, right? On Saturdays, if you have any doubts. So that is something that I enjoy doing, right? That is not something I do for a monetary purpose, but
ah,
teaching is something that I find very myself interested in, and a very good way to actually learn things, right? Right. So
yeah, right.
right. So even if today I want to sit in any interview, only thing that I will have to do is brush up my DSA skills, because front end is
Hmm,
something HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React is something that I have already been teaching since last December, right?
ah,
So I already have those theory in my mind, right? Because I teach the same thing every time. So that is
ah,
sort of I've not intentionally mugged up things, but that is in my mind now, right? So I do
hmm,
not have to pay much attention working on these topics and these concepts. But so yeah, this is something that I do on my as a extracurricular activity. But having extracurricular activity is good, but have something that actually is something related to the role that you might want to apply for. Let's say you
hmm,
might want to apply for front end or SD or back end, right? But having an
ah,
extracurricular activity in your resume that says, you're a gold medalist in swimming, that is not going
yeah,
to help your role, right? Have things in your resume that actually resembles to the description that is required for that particular role. Do not
hmm,
add other unnecessary stuff that only clutters
unnecessary.
your
Yeah,
resume, right? So that is just a small feedback from me.
yeah. So finally, do you have any advice or words of wisdom for folks who are appearing for front-end interviews or appearing for SD role in web development, और
ठीक है.
लाइक हाउ दे कैन बी स्टे मोटिवेटेड, क्योंकि क्या होता है कि जब भी कोई रिएक्ट, मतलब मे बी जब भी कोई प्रोजेक्ट करता हो रिएक्ट का हो या नॉर्मल HTML CSS का भी हो, सो अगर किधर पे एरर आया तो वो सॉल्व नहीं हो रहा है तो हम छोड़ देते हैं वहीं पे। तो वो कैसे होता है कि फ्रस्ट्रेटिंग होता है और फ्रस्ट्रेशन से छोड़ देते हैं, तो वो प्रॉब्लम्स को हम लोग लाइक फोक्स कैसे ओवरकम कर सकते
Got it. ठीक है.
हैं?
So this is actually a very good question, I would say. ठीक है. So what I will say, I can take you back a bit to my journey. ठीक है. That there was a time. ठीक है. So I remember कि when I was learning Flask, ठीक है, coming to the question where you said कि there is an issue that you are facing but you're not able to figure it out, then how to
हाँ
cope up with that, right? So when I was learning Flask, so there is a blog article by Miguel Grinsberg. ठीक है. So there's an article by Miguel Grinsberg on internet that is freely available. That is where I learned Flask from. So there was a error in his blog, right? And when I was working on a project using Flask, I found out this is something that is not working. So I
हाँ
got back to that particular article, and I saw, okay, he has done the exact same thing, but for him
हाँ
it was working. For me, it is not working.
हाँ
I gave it a lot of search. It took me around a week or 2 weeks to actually find out the issue for that, right? And when I got the issue, I wrote a mail to Miguel Grinsberg. This is something that I found. Please correct me if I'm wrong, or if that was for a particular, a specific scenario. But this is something that I found out, and would be happy if this gets corrected. So I'm not sure if that got corrected or not. I never reverted back. I never got a mail from him, right? But anyways, so I would say so if there is any problem, right, that you are
हाँ
facing when you are working on your project or not, if there is a problem, there is a solution. That is the first thing. Okay, might be possible that you are in the wrong direction. If you are trying to search for a solution and you're still not getting right, break your
हाँ
problem into multiple smaller chunks. Just
हाँ
don't do it like you got an error in the console. You just copied it and you just pasted it on internet expecting you'll get the solution. That will be happening like most of the cases, most of the times that you will get a solution directly.
हाँ
But if that is something that is not happening, right? In that case, I would say, uh, try to break your problem statement into multiple smaller chunks. That is something that I have learned from my seniors at Razorpay, right? A very good culture we have here. Anyways, so break your problem statement down. Let's say there is a problem statement that says cannot read properties of undefined, a very common error that you
हाँ
would get when you work on front end, right? So just don't if you copy that line and search it on internet, you will get a bunch of solutions there, and it might be possible that those solutions do not work for your problem statement, right? So try to find out the way I like to debug is I see which function is creating the problem, right? And that you can easily find by the console. You get the line numbers, exact line numbers, key where this problem is happening. And what I do is above that line, I console out everything to see what is it that I'm getting from where I can be getting the error, right? So try to break your problem statement into modular chunks. Do not expect if you have any problem, if a console hits red color, right? If you get any error,
हाँ
you will just give it a search and you will get the solution in the first line directly, right? That is not going to happen in some of the cases, right? When you start to work on in a corporate, right, there will be errors that you will not find a solution to directly, but you will have to break it down into smaller chunks, right? You'll have to seek a certificate. This is the part where the actual problem is, and then give it a search, and you'll find the solution for sure, right? So if there is a problem, there is a solution. It is just you're not able to find it, right? Because you're in the wrong direction, maybe, right? And do not feel like if this is the problem and I'm not able to get it from the internet, right? So let's ignore it, right? So consider it as a scope of learning for yourself, right? If you're not able to do it, reach out to your seniors, right? Maybe he or she might be able to help you. Reach out to LinkedIn on Fox, right? uh, so so I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn, I was working on this XYZ project and this is the error I'm getting. I've been searching for
हाँ
like for last 1 week or 2 weeks for on a solution, but I'm not able to figure it out. So there have been multiple instances when I already knew that solution, right? Because I've already faced it. But there have been also instances where that problem was actually very new to me, right? So that also becomes a uh, learning area for me also, right? I can actually so I used to reply them, "Okay, this is very new to me. very straightforward. Ki this is very new to me. I'm not sure about the exact solution. Give me around 2 to 3 days or a week. If I find out any lead, I'll revert back to you. So this is how it goes, right? Do not keep your problem statements with yourself. If you're not able to solve it, ask other people, right? People are happy to help, but it is just key folks are not confident enough to ask things. So there is this saying that I got from someone, when I asked a senior for a feedback, right? So he used to always say, "Key concepts are built on the easiest questions, right?
Hmm.
Easy questions build your concept, right? Tough questions will actually take you forward, but your concepts, your fundamentals will get clear with the easiest question. And there are no dumb questions. There are just easy questions and hard questions,
Hmm.
right? So keeping that thing in mind, always reach out to your seniors or anyone, right? If he or she is a known person or he or she is a unknown person, right? Reach out to him or her, right? See if she can help you, and they will come forward if they're uh, uh, what do we? I'm not sure what that word, but if they're interested enough, right?
Ah,
So they'll for sure help you, right? So this is a short advice for those who find problems actually debugging things. Coming down to the motivational part, right? So I
ah,
remember when I was in college, so there were companies visiting my college, right? And my
hmm,
resume was not getting shortlisted there for multiple companies, right? My friends were getting shortlisted, they were getting jobs and all of that stuff, and I was sitting blank. I had internships in my pocket, and a couple of folks did not even have a single internships in their pocket, but still they were getting placed. No hard feelings there,
hmm,
right? But because they might be having something that company needs, and I am not having that thing, right?
ah,
So that there is always this case, right? You will see कि अच्छा ठीक है, I'm having internships, I'm not getting a job, but that guy or that girl is not having an internship, and he or she is getting a job. How? The simple answer to that is company needs a certain requirement. Company has a certain requirement. Company
ah,
needs a certain skill set that person have, right? The skill sets that you have is not something that this company needs, and that is why they did not shortlist you, right? So
hmm,
have this thing in mind, right? So when a company will come to you, to a college, or let's say off campus also, right? And there is a requirement where your skill set actually match, they'll take you, right? You just have to wait. So
hmm,
there was a time when 10 to 15 companies came to a college, right? They visited our campus, and I was not even, my resume was not even shortlisted in any of those, right? I was not
ah,
even giving a single coding round. Okay. Then there was a time when my resume got shortlisted for the first time, right?
ah,
And I was rejected in the very last round. Okay. And from there on, I was shortlisted to each and every company that visited my college, right? So you just have to wait, have some patience there, right? If you are not able to make it, find out ki what is it that you are lacking, right?
ah,
Just do not think of it. So there is one of my friend, right, who used to think, I'm the perfect guy. Why am I
ah,
not getting this job, right? The problem
ah,
with him was he was not able to figure out things. You know, this is the place where actually you are missing things out, right?
hmm,
So when he actually asked a couple of folks in from LinkedIn, can you? This is my resume. Can you tell me ki, what am I lacking? They gave him some feedback there, and that is how he actually improved himself and got himself to a very good company, right? Amazon. Everyone
ah,
might be familiar with, right?
ah,
And he has worked very hard for that. But yeah, so do not get disheartened, right? So try the only thing that you can do is keep trying, right? When your time will come, you'll be shining. Okay, just have
yeah,
some patience, right? When the correct company comes as per your skill set, he or that company will take you for sure. All you have to do is just have some patience, wait a bit, right? So have some patience. So I got Razorpay similar in a similar fashion only. There was a time
ah,
when I was not getting shortlisted in any of these companies,
hmm,
right? Two LP package, 5 LP package, 10 LP package, 15 LP package. None of these companies were
ah,
shortlisting me, right? You can think of it like, I have internships, I have
ah,
experiences, I have projects, I have hackathons, and I'm not getting shortlisted in a 2 LP company. Okay, so there is
yeah,
this time that everyone will face, right? For sure.
hmm,
But there will always be a time where you will say, "Acha, okay, your resume is getting shortlisted everywhere. You're able to make it into multiple companies. Now you have options, you have choices, right? To make which
yeah,
company you want to join, right? So
hmm,
same thing happened for me. So I have different offers from different places, and Razorpay was something that I have actually used a product of when I was back in my college days, right? So
Hmm.
there was this coaching teacher, right, who
Ah,
actually taught my close friend, a senior of mine, right? So he wanted a website for his
hmm.
institution. So it was a very local coaching. There are no branches for it, right? Just one coaching. He
Ah,
wanted a a website for it. So I actually built that website, right?
hmm.
So when you see things actually getting used, right, so you can show those things, right? So I have all these things that actually people told, have this thing in your resume, have that thing in your resume. I have freelancing, I had team projects, I have what do we say, hackathons,
Hackathon.
I have everything, right? I even made it to top 10 rankers in a hackathon, right? Um,
Hmm.
everything was there, but still there is a time for everything, right? You just have to wait for things,
Yeah,
right? So just keep working, keep grinding. When it will be your time, you'll shine.
yeah. So that's it.
Yep.
So thank you,
So,
Divyansh. It was really insightful session. So बहुत लोगों को help होगा जो who are
sure.
preparing for it. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Omkar.
Yeah.